Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back on the second day of start of deconfining, at least in Luxembourg, and the sun is shining. All the more so as we have one of the most smiling persons I know in our guest today, Corinne Lamesch. Welcome. Hi, Corinne.
Hi, Rajaa. How are you?
Good. Very happy to see you because I haven't met you physically now in a few months, and you always infuse great energy. I'm always double happy when I host a woman of your caliber, and you're the third one in this series of interviews live, because Corinne, you wear two hats. You are the chairperson of ALFI since June last year, ALFI being the voice of the asset management industry and you being the face, but you are also the country head of Fidelity in Luxembourg, and Fidelity is just, one of the top 5 asset management firms in the world. You come with more than 20 years of experience in the industry, including your first 10 years, I think, as a lawyer specialized in the investment fund industry in Luxembourg. And you have a double degree, so you're a double person in many, many ways, very impressive. Because you studied in France, but also in New York, where you gained an LLM back in the late 90s. So, wow, super CV. Great person. I mean, I have the chance to have worked with you because LPEA and ALFI do more and more together. And this is why we thought it's very important that we host you today. So Corinne, as you know, probably it's 10 minutes with 3 questions together, and then a few Q&As with the audience as they see fit. Is there anything I should have said or not said actually about this introduction?
No, your introduction is perfect, Rajaa. Thanks.
Thank you, Corinne. So welcome again. First question, that everybody asks themselves in our world of private equity is, what are the key trends in traditional asset management and in general that you've been observing over the last 2 months and that will probably shape the industry going forward?
Well, I think that obviously what we have experienced the last 2 months is definitely a crisis, a dramatic market downturn in March, end of March. I think in my career it has definitely been the most challenging months in my career, but also I think, as you say, there might be opportunities, and there definitely will be opportunities coming out of this crisis. But if we look at the macro environment, I think obviously the pandemic combined with lockdown has obviously made that businesses have been shut down. Obviously, markets have reacted quite dramatically to this. So we have seen in March markets dropping to up to 30% in various markets. Obviously, that has an impact on the funds which we manage. It has impact on obviously that potentially people want to sell down their assets. It can also have impact on liquidity of the funds. And I can tell you that we as an industry association have been working hand in hand with our members to look at all the issues which we have experienced. So there have been many, many questions on various topics, which we have centralized and then dispatched to the relevant authorities, including the CSSF. The CSF has then issued Q&As to address some of the concerns there were. Obviously, they were concerned about how do we meet. The first concern was how do we work from home, all from home, which we managed quite well, I think, as an industry. I think we are an industry which has been very resilient to the working from home situation. And then I think we have been looking at, obviously, IT, security. We have been looking at liquidity measures and how to implement them. We have been looking at reporting. We have been looking at how do we sign documents? How do we do AML without wet signatures? So
but Corinne, there's been a huge recovery in the markets, though, in April.
Yes.
So has this helped, or do you think it's just a temporary reprieve?
I think that what has helped is obviously the intervention of the Fed and the ECB, and obviously the governments, which I think we have huge help packages, and also obviously the buying back of bonds. All of this has helped. All of these are measures which have, I think, calmed again the markets. Whether the crisis in the financial sector, let's say in the markets, or whether the markets have completely calmed down, I think it's too early to tell. Mm-hmm. It will really depend on also how the virus will continue, how the businesses will again pick up. Obviously, it's I have to say it's quite there are quite a lot of controversies in this crisis. I mean, the markets have picked up so rapidly, whereas the forecasts on our economy are quite grim.
Well, they say it's the Main Street versus Wall Street right now, and then to disconnect, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite controversial, quite disconnected, as you say. But I think that obviously the fact that there was very quick help, and that that there was quickly we were able to see that there was an intervention in easing of monetary policy. I think that helped enormously.
Mm-hmm. And Corinne, I don't know how much visibility you have, but as a chairperson of ALFI, therefore, which, as you said, the powerful voice for the asset management industry, have your priorities changed now on the back of this crisis? Or is it too early to say? What is the big picture at the ALFI?
So as I just mentioned, in the short term, our priorities changed completely because we were involved in crisis management with the whole industry. Mm-hmm. So addressing the concerns the industry had and helping them to find solution. But the long-term strategies and priorities of ALFI haven't changed. And I think they will even be stronger and more needed after this crisis. So our priorities were we had a handful of very important priorities, one of which was sustainable finance and ESG. I definitely believe that topic will become even more important now.
So you're echoing what Julie Becker of Luxembourg Stock Exchange told us last week.
Completely, because we were focusing on the E, and we wanted to address the climate change issues. Now, and already there we have huge funding needs. Now we need to address the S on how are we keeping employment, how are we making sure our health systems are strong. So the S is now also on the focus, and we will need funding for that. So to channel private funding into ESG company or ESG related projects or companies which are strong in ESG is even more important. I think then what we have also seen, and that is really great to see, because now we have some data we can use, is that those companies who were strong or had strong ESG rating managed the crisis, or managed at least the beginning of the crisis better than less well-rated ESG companies. So it is going to be more and more important for companies to think about broader stakeholders than just the shareholders who get dividends paid out. And that is something which is going to be even more emphasized now with this crisis.
I think we see the giant firms like BlackRock and others, Franklin Templeton, call for much stronger regulations to enhance ESG measures at your end. But so you have a busy mandate as a chairperson of ALFI, sustainability in particular.
And then I also wanted to say another one which was top on our agenda is to transform our industry to become more digital. I think now we were in a crisis situation where we had it to become digital, and I think we now saw live what needs to be improved, what can still be improved, where the issues were. I think, there's so many cases which we can raise thereafter where we can try to improve the digital journey. So I think, again, we were tested dramatically, but I think what was great was to see we were able to work from home with the digital tools which we currently have, but there's so much more we can do. And again, we can now focus on those areas where we can do a difference, having experienced some of the things.
Corinne, what you're saying is, can you stay with us a bit longer? Because what you're saying is inspire our audience, and there's a few questions on these priorities. Sorry, I interrupted you to say that. Just not to forget.
You wanted to ask a question?
No, our audience are asking questions on what you're saying now, but I'll keep them for the end because I still have one more question, but you wanted to finish on priorities.
Just say my last priority, because I think it will maybe also be interesting for your audience, for the LPEA audience. One of our priorities is also to continue to develop, obviously, alternative funds. And as you know yourself, alternative funds has seen a big uptick over the last years. And it will remain a very important tool after this crisis to channel, again, private monies into the real economy. So that is going to stay a top priority for ALFI to continue to promote, together with LPEA on the private equity side, the alternatives space.
Well, then I feel like asking you a last question about what should we be doing together? I mean, I know we've been already holding a few sessions to talk about things that are close to both our agendas, not least the diversity point, also sustainability. Where do you see ALFI and LPEA coming together? Because this is very much on the top of our agenda, by the way.
Yes, so I think that definitely diversity is something where we could work together. And I know you already have a women's, I would call it a women's club. As you know, we discussed that. I am a believer we need to look broader than gender diversity for our industry. We need to look at diversity of bringing diverse talent to Luxembourg. Obviously, diversity not only in gender, but also in other areas. And so I am a very strong also believer of that we definitely need to do more in gender diversity. And I'm a big let's say, how do you say that?
Close to your heart, yes. And as a lady, as a leading lady, I think you can inspire that. I think starting with the gender diversity is a good stepping stone, because the day we abolish International Women's Day, we know we got somewhere. But I agree with you, it's not enough.
Yeah, so I think there I have ideas and we discussed them. I think one point we need to be getting better at in Luxembourg is get good data for our industry on where we stand on, for example, gender diversity. If you look at other countries like the UK, they publish more data, and it's also a voluntary. It's voluntary, so it's industry-led that they agree to publish data on this. So ALFI is going to want to launch a survey, but which we didn't do now because I think companies have other things to do to work on the survey, but we want to get data. Once we have data, I think we can find solutions and have an action plan. And I think definitely if we collect data, I think we should definitely try to get data as well from the LPEA.
No, definitely we have this in common. And I just want to reiterate for our audience that everything we do is to help promote Luxembourg even better on the international stage as a hub for financial markets, be they public or private. So I look forward to this collaboration, Corinne. So do you have a few minutes for a couple of more questions?
Of course, Rajaa.
Thank you.
Actually, this went by really quickly.
Yeah, you see, first I'm happy because we didn't even say the C word. And actually you didn't really mention the R word, regulation. But tell us about regulatory pressure, because a lot of, you mentioned the Q&A sent to the regulator. What is the most, how can I say, overbearing issue that your members have been expressing towards the CSSF in particular, and maybe even at European level?
Well, I think, so I think there are two things I think which will happen. So one thing is we looked at actually, could we ease some regulation during this crisis, because people were all focusing on, just trying to get through it in a BCP mode. So I think we asked for delays in reporting requirements, etc. Also in regulatory consultations, that the regulators put out consultations also at European level. We asked for more time because people were not focused on it. And it's very important that we answer to those consultations so that we get the right regulation. But in terms of regulation, I think liquidity is already a topic which was under scrutiny or where regulators were focusing on. I think that will become a topic which will be looked at, potentially valuation, How do you value assets in periods like this? Systemically importance of asset management might be coming back on the table. There, I would want to say that I don't think I think, yes, we have an important role, but we are not like banks in this. And I really think the asset management industry has been very resilient through this crisis. So I personally would want that the current regulation we have starts to work well and is well embedded. Instead, if we would look at bringing new regulation is a trend which happens after each crisis, but we will need to make sure it remains balanced so that we can still grow our business and can innovate.
Well, that's a great statement. I'll make sure to ask Claude Marx, who will be one of our guests next week, the head of CSSF. Corinne, you're a very inspiring lady, so I want to ask you two personal questions, one of which came through the audience. The first one is, I know how much you value real life interaction, and that you're a person of, people relationships. So how have you been readjusting your work life and also probably your personal life in the last 2 months? How has it been for you?
Well, I can tell you there have been ups and downs, if I'm honest with you. The first 3 weeks I was glued to my chair and my computer, I can tell you. I didn't move a lot from there. Then I found that this was not very healthy and that I needed to do some sport or balance, to have some balance. So I started to do with my husband every day 1 hour of cycling tour.
Oh, wonderful.
And I discovered so many nice little villages in our neighboring environment that I just found this is great. I mean, to have this 1 hour a day was really great. So I think what is really important is that you have still a life balance, and that you do work, but that you also do other things. And maybe the things you were doing change. I try to cook a little bit more. I can still tell you that's not going to be my strength.
I'm taking cooking lessons if you want to join.
I would need it. And I tried gardening, however, and I think I have a little green hand.
Wonderful. So you're a nature lover, and it's true that Luxembourg lends itself very well to all kinds of outdoor activities. And last but not least, so you are the boss of Fidelity in Luxembourg. Fidelity is a family-owned business that is headed by the daughter of the founder, Abigail Johnson, for those who don't know her. How is it to work in a female-led company? Is it different? Is it better? Is it harder?
I think working for a group belonging to Abby Johnson is definitely very inspiring. Our CEO, Anne Richards, is also very inspiring, and I learn a lot by seeing how they operate. And they are on our boards here of the Luxembourg companies, so that's a great way to meet them from time to time. But definitely, I think that when you have female-led businesses, I think that it brings diverse point of view into an organization. So I'm a very strong believer that you need to look at issues from different lenses, and I think that diversity is a key to that.
I think, Corinne, we make sure you attend our next PE for Women seminar, and you would be a fantastic mentor and role model for many of the young talent. Any closing statement, maybe looking forward for the asset management industry, how confident you feel about the recovery?
I honestly think that I cannot say whether we are through the storm completely. But I think that definitely I can already say that the months of April and May might be already better in terms of assets. As you know, we are measuring ourselves in Luxembourg, assets under management. We were at the all high in January, 4.7 trillion assets under management. We are now at 4.1. So since January, we lost more or less 600 billion, which is mainly driven by market movements. So I think that as the markets have been recovering, we will already see April and May recovering. So from that perspective, I think it will be better, but I just think that we will need to, I'm cautiously optimistic that we will get out of this pandemic now. hopefully soon, and that we can meet again, have interactions with each other.
Definitely. Corinne, wonderful to have you. Please stay tuned. If you want to subscribe to the LPEA YouTube channel, please do so you can visualize this interview again. I want to thank Corinne and say to you, connect again on Thursday, where we host an investor who's both in private and public markets, Serge de Gannet. Corinne, I look forward to our toast after this whole episode allows us to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajaa. Thank you for having me. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you.